Hey everybody, what we're going to talk about tonight is large models. And I'm not meaning the 80-inch and above, which used to be part of the IMAA. I'm talking about anything that is over the 55 pounds. So I got some documents I printed out here. Now the AMA has a really nice way of doing large models. And the biggest reason the AMA does this is to show the FAA that we're a self-governed group of people. So, aviators. So the thing is that when people want to fly large models, there are certain regulations that you want to follow under the AMA. And as I just said, the reason we're doing this is to show the FAA that we're not a bunch of clowns, that we are self-governed, that we are responsible aviators that care about what we're doing. And there's some people out there that don't even know you can go above 55 pounds. They just think 55 pounds is the rule. But technically, we can go from 55 pounds to 77 pounds, 2 ounces, and be in a classification that's called the LMA-1, which is the Large Model Aircraft number 1 kind of regulations. And then there's the LMA-2. I'm not discussing turbines because they have their whole over 55 pound thing too, but I'm not a turbine guy, so I'm not going to speak on any of this about turbines tonight. So, but what I wanted to talk about is the way that the AMA's laid all of this out. And there's been a lot of thought that went into this. I mean, it's really brilliant what the AMA has done for ensuring that us aviators that want to fly large models or over 55 pounds can do it. So we can technically go up to 125 pounds, okay? There is some discussion out there of raising that roof because, you know, over in Europe and over in England, they actually go up really, I mean, into the 325 pound, I think it is, or something like that. But, and don't quote me on that. I try to only talk about facts, okay? So, and I might stumble through this. I know these documents, but I want to make sure I'm explaining it virtually the way it's read. So sometimes if I stumble through this, just bear with me. I'm trying to educate everybody so that they understand that us model aviators are a group of really neat people that are just not a bunch of jackasses out trying to fly in the approach of O'Hare Airport or something, okay? So what I'm going to do is talk about this over 55, and I guess the way I want to kind of talk about this is as if I was teaching a class where, you know, I'm thinking about questions people might ask me. And I don't want to sit here and just read this or just post the documents because I don't know how much you're going to get out of that. But there's some basic things in here, and some of them are kind of surprising to me. Because as you know, I have designed and built many of my own large models, which means I know how to glue, I know how to screw them, I know how to do the carbon fiber, I know how to do the spars. You know, I am lucky enough that as a builder, designer and builder, that when I take my airplane in front of the AMA, I can prove to them how it was built. So what I want to talk about a little bit is some just real general things. So one of the things that they have as requirements is that your airplane does not exceed 80 ounces per square foot, the wing loading. To me, that is a high wing load, but I'm sure it falls into some of the really scale warbirds. If you're a turbine, it actually goes up to 100 ounces per square foot. Just an FYI, I have never had an airplane to date exceed 48 ounces a square foot. And that was a really heavy Corsair. Most of my planes are the 25 to 35, but I've never had one go over 48. And this says you can go up to 80. So that gives you a lot of room. Now keep in mind, larger airplanes, and this goes into that whole cubed wing load that you can look up. A large airplane can have a really high wing load compared to a small airplane. I'm not going to get into all the aeronautical junk on that, but I do understand them having that 80 ounces. Okay, it makes complete sense. So when you start to think about some of the requirements, there is no engine size on internal combustion or electric engines. On turbines there is. I'm not going to get into the weeds on turbines. There's some just basically things that you need to know if you're going to have a plane over 55 pounds. You're going to have dual batteries on the receiver. Okay, you're going to have a fail-safe system on your radio that works in this program. You're going to have an engine cutoff. All your wiring on a giant scale airplane, on a over 55 pound airplane, will be in the 22 to 24 gauge wire or bigger. You need to dynamically balance all your flight surfaces. Now, some airplanes that's really hard to do, and dynamically balancing, from my understanding, is I use counterbalances on my surfaces so that they're like a real full-scale aircraft. They're balanced, okay, or there's some of the load taken off it. My MSL-2, the elevators were so light, I was able to get away with some really, really small counterbalances on it. But if you don't understand, all full-scale airplanes have dynamically balanced flying surfaces so they won't flutter. So that's an important thing. There's a whole section in here on servo torque, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But what I want to talk about is the permitting requirements for getting your large model over 55 pounds into the air. So if you're the 77, if you're under the LMA-1, which means you're under 77 pounds 2 ounces, if you're in that band of 55 to 77.2, the temporary authorization to fly is filled out by the owner, me. Okay? Permit to fly is filled out by myself or an observer. And I'm talking about the paperwork you need to get your plane into the air. And I'm going to discuss that in a minute. But I'm talking about the difference between LMA-1 and LMA-2 right now, okay? Inspection checklist, okay, on LMA-1, under 77.2, completed by the owner or a LMA inspector. There's a person that is a large model aircraft inspector, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about them in a minute. So basically, the maneuvers that you're going to fly on the airplane is chosen by the builder and owner, and that could be, level maneuvers, flat turns, gentle climbs, dives. It could be looping maneuvers, rolling maneuvers, inverted spins, snap maneuvers, and unrestricted aerobatics. So it depends on the type of airplane you're building, okay? But so in a nutshell, what I'm just talking about under LMA-1 is you can basically do all of your inspections and everything yourself. However, when you go to fly, test fly the airplane, you need to do 2 demonstration flights. And if you as the owner is flying it, then you have to have either 2 CDs. It needs to be observed by the owner pilot and either an AMA contest director, CDs, that's who I get to look at mine, a lead member, a lifetime member, or an LMA inspector. So if you look at your paperwork, and I'm going to discuss paperwork in a minute, if I'm the one test flying the airplane, I have to have 2 CDs witness me fly it. If I'm letting somebody test fly my plane, then me and a CD is equivalent, but 2 people have to visually see me fly the plane. Now, if you're flying an LMA-2, which is 77 pounds 3 ounces up to 125, it's different. The temporary authorization to fly is completed by the inspector, not you. The permit to fly can be completed by the owner. Well, it's completed by the owner and the inspector. Okay? The inspection checklist is completed by the inspector. So the AMA basically says, we believe in you as the pilot that when it's 77 pounds 2 ounces or less, pilot builder, that you are authorized to do the inspections. But if it's over the 77 3 ounces, we need to have a trained inspector inspect that airplane because it's going up to 125 pounds. Okay. Then you need to discuss the maneuvers that you're going to fly with that inspector. You know, like my MSL 1 and 2, they both are signed off to do regular maneuvers, loops, and hammerheads. I don't have rolls, I don't have inverted, and I don't have anything else. But most vintage airplanes, like Curtis Jenny's or whatever, they could do loops fine. They could do figure eights and hammerheads. You know, I don't know why I didn't get it signed off to do rolls because it will roll, but I don't like rolling my big giant scale airplanes. They're very slow. When you do a nice slow lumbering loop, it's beautiful. When you do a nice slow roll, with a slow big airplane, it just gets wonky. And maybe if I got up 300 feet, I'd be fine, but I'm just not interested. On your 2 demonstration flights, if you're LMA-2, you have to do them in front of an LMA inspector. Okay. And then you've got your documents: temporary authorization to fly, full and complete and accurate permit form, builder's declaration, completed pre-flight checklist, and you have to have 3 photos of your model. And all of that I discussed right there gets sent to the AMA. Okay. So hopefully you understand the 2 big buckets I'm talking about right now. So LMA-1, 77 pounds, 2 ounces and less, above 55. You can do your self-inspection, but when you do your test flight, you're going to have 2 CDs or a CD and a lifetime member. You're going to have 2 people witness you do it. That follows underneath their requirements. If you're LMA-2, it's a different thing. Okay? LMA inspector is going to have to inspect your airplane, going to have to see you fly it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the inspectors toward the end of this because many people are just intimidated when they look at the requirements to be an inspector, but I'll talk about that later. So now I want to talk about the forms. And the temporary authorization to fly. Essentially what this is I have inspected this model aircraft in accordance with the current LMA pre-flight inspection outline. To the best of my knowledge and belief, the model will be suitable for the intended demonstration flights in accordance with the program requirements. So basically, you're going to do a description of the model, who the owner is, you're going to sign it, you're going to have the, on this LMA-1, all I got to do is sign it, put my AMA number, and the date that it's going to fly. If it's LMA-2, you got to have your inspector fill some of this out, or all of it, actually. So here's my permit to fly. This document is what I take with me everywhere I fly it. There's been some talk about creating a little bitty card for us LMA-1 and LMA-2 pilots that we could show at a fly-in. But anytime we go to a fly-in, we take this document to give to the CD to show that our airplane meets LMA-1 or LMA-2. I also, and I don't remember if it's in the documents, and I apologize to the AMA if I forgot this, but I keep a logbook on all of my LMA-1 airplanes, and I got a plane right now that will be LMA-2, but it's not done. Well, and here's another thing. I have a plane that's a cargo plane, and when it is empty, it's going to weigh 75 pounds, under the 77. But when it carries cargo, I want to carry up to 100 pounds of tanks and GI Joes and stuff I can dump out of it. Okay, let me rephrase that. I can't carry 100 pounds of cargo. My maximum takeoff weight will be at 100 pounds, is what I'm designing the plane for. So I'm going to go ahead and get it inspected as an LMA-2 and do all my demonstration flights with the cargo or the ballast in the airplane at 100 pounds. But this permit to fly for all model airplane classes form, and this is called, I'm not sure why they call it form LMA-2, but this covers LMA-1 and LMA-2 aircraft. That's right. So you have your owner's name, ANA number, model description, airplane type. Like my vintage planes, I'll write what it is. Wingspan, weight, wet. It's electric. Wet means with the batteries. I have to have either a CD, an LMA, or an LMA. Oh, I'm sorry, that's for turbine. And no, that's the inspector. I'm reading that right. Yep. So lifetime member, CD, or an inspector initialate. I always have CD. So pardon me for being wonky on this a little bit, because I always have a very set way of doing it. I have 2 CDs show up. I show them all my inspection stuff. I walk them through all the AMA docs, and I go take off, because normally I've flown at 77 pounds, 2 ounces or less. So you do the engine manufacturer, which is normally Hacker. That's what I fly. Designed by me. Color scheme, whatever you paint the airplane to be. Is it kit plans, custom, or other? And I write that, you know, self-designed, engineered, and created by me, you know. Then they want to know the type of transmitter you got, receiver you got, the batteries you're using, the power distribution system if you're using one, type of servos, elevator servos, ailerons, rudders, flaps, flight envelope. I normally check the level maneuvers, flat turns, gentle climbs, dives, and looping maneuvers. And then off to the side, I will write hammerheads, just so the AMA knows that I count hammerheads as a maneuver. The above described airplane has been inspected for airworthiness and has demonstrated its ability to perform within the design flight envelopes as indicated on this permit. So I basically will write my name, then the no, my name's up here. Actually, this is where the 2 CDs, my 2 CDs fill it out and put in their stuff. And they got to put their LMA number and all of that. I'm sorry, they got to put in their AMA number and all that. So there's that. Then we have a builder's declaration. I certify the materials, methods, and standards used in the construction of this model airplane to the best of my knowledge and belief and suitable to fly for the pilot. I think I already read that one, didn't I? Then we have the temporary authorization to fly. What this means is you can't test fly your airplane without filling this out. This gives me the temporary authorization that I'm guaranteeing everybody that I knew what I did when I built this airplane. I've inspected this model airplane in accordance with the AMA LMA pre-flight inspection outline. Best of my knowledge and belief. Okay, basically we're saying virtually the same thing, but this is your temporary authorization to fly. And one thing I want to say here, and I'm going to get a little bit deeper in a minute about building your airplane. If you buy an airplane at a swap meet and it weighs 2 scenarios. It weighs 65 pounds. And you go through it, you fill out all the paperwork, you show up to your club, 2 CDs witness you fly it. And you fly the plane, and then a month later you pull a high stress maneuver, the wing folds and it crashes. Okay. Since you were not the builder of that airplane, since you don't know how that spar was made, you're taking a lot of risk in that airplane. So all I would like to say to everybody is figure out a way to look at the way your plane was constructed. Okay. Now, if it's LMA-2, and let's say it weighs 105 pounds, and you show up and the inspector walks up and looks at it, and they ask you where you got it, and you say, oh, I bought it at swap meet. And they say, well, how do I see the spars? You got any pictures of the construction? You know, are there any hatches I can remove to see how the plane was built? They may not give you a sign off on that airplane. Okay. So as the builder, take tons of pictures when you're building the airplane so you can show the AMA how it was constructed, how it was created, show them everything you do. I mean, I normally end up with about 1,000 pictures of my builds, and when it's going to be over 77 3 ounces, I'm without a doubt going to have a way to show them every step of the way that the airplane was constructed. I do a lot of load testing in my garage of the wings, so I could even show them pictures of the load testing to show them, you know, what I tested the wings for. So the more documentation you've got, if you're going to be LMA-2, the better for that inspector to be able to have their heads around how you built that airplane. Because a lot of people ask me why I'm not an inspector, and maybe I'll become an inspector. I just, you know, I just haven't done it. But if I was the inspector and I'm going to sign off that that airplane is airworthiness, I'm going to have to know 100% how that plane was built. Okay, I'm just going to have to know how the spar was done. There is an awful lot of stuff going on where people are building airplanes where they think just because they put an aluminum tube in there as a spar, you know, it's good to go. And I'll tell you, there's a lot that goes on in the wing of an airplane than just that aluminum spar in there. Okay, so and I'm not going to go into the design. So now what we're going to talk about is something that I think is a little bit of a pain in the butt, but it's absolutely needed, and it's brilliant to have. And it can be just a little bit intimidating because you got to take a little bit of time and do some math. But it is the servo torque section of the over 55 guidelines. And I'm not going to get too deep into this right now, but basically the AMA wants to know for a fact that you have big enough servos to move your flying surfaces. Okay, they really want to know 100% that you have sized your servos right. The reason is that on some warbirds, and I've seen this actually happen on planes under 55 pounds, where they're got a P-51, normally it's P-47s for some reason, I've seen this, but it comes screaming out of the dive, and the guy almost hits the ground and goes, man, he goes, I ran out of elevator, I don't know what happened. Well, he didn't run out of elevators, his elevator servos weren't strong enough to pull the elevator out. So and I'm just going to briefly talk about the airspeed factors. So if you have a propeller or soaring glider airplane whose flight regime will only include level flat turns, gentle climbs, and moderate dives, the airspeed factor is 1.25. However, if you got an airplane that's going to go 140 mile an hour, you need the factor of 6.0. So there's factors that when you do the math, and basically what you do is you look at the square inches of your flying surface, and you look at the moment between the servo and the arm and the moment between the flying surface and the control arm. And it's easy to do if you take your time. It's just regular straight math, everybody. But this is kind of a pain that every time I build, and I've only built a couple of LMA-1 airplanes, that I've got to take, you know, and figure out the aileron square inches, the elevator, the rudder, got to do the math, make sure it's right. And today, if you got over 300, 400 ounce servos, most of the time you are fine. Now, there are some big airplanes that are aerobatic or big, and I'm not talking about turbines right now, but there's some big airplanes that go really fast that you may need a couple of those 300 ounce servos or 300 or 400 ounce servos on a flying surface. And this is all for safety and protecting your model. If you spend 4 years building a model. Now what I want to talk about is the inspections. Now this checklist is your pre-flight, but there's also some things in here that have little asterisks next to it. And that means that you use this as your inspection for your first maiden flight, but you also keep this with you because anything with an asterisk here is things that you need to do every time you fly the airplane. So, and I'm not going to go through every bit of this, okay? But essentially, you know, you've got your wing group, your fuselage group. This is talking about like landing gear attachment points, wing attachment points. If you've got flying wires, the flying wires attachment points, all that different stuff. And you inspect it unassembled and then assembled. But just to give you an idea of things that you should always check every time you fly your airplane. Keep in mind, I keep this with my other documentation all in a manila folder with my logbook for each of my LMA-1 airplanes. So some of the things, and this is basic common sense with aviation. I'm a full-scale pilot. There's like 30 things I always check on an airplane when I do my pre-flight. When I walk around the airplane, you know, I'm checking hinges. I'm checking connection points of control linkages. You know, I'm sumping the tank for water. There's things you do on full-scale airplanes that if you're going to fly an LMA-1 or an LMA-2 under the AMA regulations, you need to be as if you're a full-scale pilot. Okay, we have responsibility. So the FAA understands that we are responsible aviators. So, engine, propeller secured undamaged. Okay, spinner secure and clear the propeller blades. This is what we should be doing on every model airplane we have. Okay? I do want to tell you something funny. I saw an airplane go down the runway and start porpoising and beat itself so bad that it actually damaged the front nose gear. And what had happened was when it moved around in the guy's truck, the elevator hit the back of his gate and it broke the elevator horn. So he had this little 40 size airplane, started up, went out, moved the sticks, flew down the runway, it would never take off. Luckily the plane was a little bit tail heavy, or if it would have taken off, he never would have had any control. It just kept trying to stay on the ground. You should be inspecting your small airplanes every time you fly them, okay? And with large airplanes, we know we have that responsibility. So engine mounting and accessories secure. Jiggle your motor around. I was at the AMA homecoming 10 or 15 years ago, and a guy had a, oh my God, it wasn't an extra 260, maybe it was a laser. I can't remember what it was. But when he went to start it, the whole engine shook and he moved it. And he goes, oh my God, my firewall's coming out. And we sat there and repinned it with toothpicks and epoxied his firewall back in. But when he hit it, the whole engine moved. Cowling attachment points, magneto switch is functioning. External service points, check where you fuel it and all that junk. The other stuff you should be doing every time is correct movement and steering of all control surfaces. Batteries charged, your plane fueled up, or sufficient air in the system. Ensure all flying surfaces, fuselage demonstrate appropriate stiffness and integrity. Okay, airplane secure before startup, tie down. So the things with asterisks are things you should do every time you fly your airplane. But all these other things here are what you do on your initial inspection before you fly the plane. Okay? So all of this here, I had somebody say, my God, what a pain in the ass to fly a big airplane. And if I had any hair left, I would pull it out saying, this is to prove to the world that we as aviators are responsible. Okay? When you fly a plane over 55 pounds, whoever picked that number, I don't know, it doesn't matter. But somewhere they had to create a rule that an airplane got heavy enough that just nobody should just start it up and maybe fly it into the side of a minivan. You see people all the time go out of control. We all the time, all of us have witnessed this. The guy that flies the ARF or girl, a month later, he's got a P-51 Mustang and he's just ready to tear up the sky. Well, having this, and if you're going to follow the regs, keep people from getting over 55 pounds without any experience. Now, I do want to touch on this, and I know I'm going to get some emails on this. I always get emails when I say stuff like this. But I have been at events where people say, who cares if it's 60 pounds? Just fly it. And I'm kind of like, what do you mean? And they're like, it's close up to 55. My MSL2 weighs 59 pounds, or 58 pounds and 14 ounces. Okay? That's really close to 55. If anybody would look at it and pick up the tail or, pick up the airplane, they'd go, wow, this is light for a 88-inch wingspan plane. But it's my integrity that goes into me building that airplane from nothing, me drawing it up. So why would I lie? If it is over 55 pounds, look, if it's over 55 and under 77 too, it's easy. You do your own self-inspection. You just have to have 2 CDs. Every club normally has a couple of CDs. Hell, my club has like 9 CDs. So, I want to wrap this up now. I didn't want this to be a massively long video. But I just want everybody to understand that complying to this 520A under the AMA is easy. My Emma-Stein, my big transport plane, I will have an LMA-2 on it. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about at the end here, and I'm not going to get the documents out, it's being an inspector. And I've had some people come out to me and say, well, I can't be an inspector because I'm not a full-scale mechanic. And there's some language in there that says that they would like you to be a person who professionally maintains unmanned aircraft over 55 pounds. So in some ways, people read that and say, if you're an aircraft mechanic, they really want you to be an LMA inspector. But there's other things there. You know, there's having basically 3 people. One has to be an LMA pilot, basically endorse you and say, yes, you know, Damon Dad knows how to build giant scale airplanes because he built him from scratch himself. He's shown all the testing on YouTube. He should be an LMA inspector, okay? But there's a committee that looks at all this documentation and ultimately gives you a green light or a red light. So don't be intimidated by that. If you built giant scale airplanes, your friends are, I mean, I shouldn't say giant scale. If you built over 55, you got friends that build over 55, they will basically say you're good to go in all of this stuff. Then at that point, you should try to be the inspector, okay? They just don't want people that's flown 55 and above that bought the plane at the swap meet saying, I want to be an inspector. You've got to know how to build. You've got to know what you're looking at. You know, so if you want to be an inspector, I'd really beg you to at least try it. See, if you're flying LMA-1 or LMA-2 right now, okay? So that's it, everybody. You have an awesome day. I've got a couple more videos I'm going to do today because I had a young boy send me an email saying, could you do one just for novices? You've talked about how to fly warbirds. You've talked about how to fly giant scale planes, but could you talk about if I don't know anything and I'm starting from scratch, how I can be a pilot? I'm going to do that video in about 3 hours. So everybody have a great day. I hope this is informative, and keep aviating, okay? Prove to the FAA that we're reasonable people and not crazy, okay? Rock on.